Alright, if your arm's gonna start it, then let me, the sexy man, do it for you.
That's not allowed. That's not.
That you are including that in this week's podcast. People need to know.
No,
They need to know the
no.
truth. Guys, you are being silenced from the truth. Okay?
Wait, what?
I am
You mean?
sexy. Jokes aside, welcome back to another podcast, week 9. It's been a long time, dude. Seriously, week 9. Today we're discussing memory, nostalgia, and just you'll see. It's quite a
You'll see.
you'll
Okay,
see.
dude. Well, when I initially thought of bringing up this topic, it was mainly just obviously because of the things that we're experiencing currently, right? With our transition into I don't know if you can call it the later parts of our life, but maybe the mid sections of our life, the transition from youth to maybe middle-aged. Well, not yet, but roughly somewhere there. But anyways, it's in this point where you feel that sense of nostalgia for the past few years that you've experienced, your childhood, maybe not even just that, but like just a feeling of like you're lost. You don't know what to do as well because it's a transition, and these past memories, this nostalgia helps keep you grounded and reminds you of who you are and that sort of thing. And I think it's something very big that we're experiencing right now, which is why I tend to say like that's just why I tend to tell people like, hey dude, this is gonna be like the greatest, not I wouldn't say the greatest, but one of the great few moments of our one of the great few spans of our lives. And then people are like, nah bro, what are you talking about? And then soon they'll realize that I was right all along, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, like, if not now, at some point, people are gonna be like, it goes back to what we were discussing a while ago, in a few other podcasts. Like, you don't appreciate something's value until like you lose it, right? And it's kind of similar with like these nostalgic events, or just anything that happens that you didn't value much before. Then you go back and you're like, oh wait, I remember we did that. Now I understand why that was valuable. And you get that joy. Maybe not if you're not appreciating that in the moment, you will soon learn that it was a beautiful moment and that it had some impact on you. And I think that's just one of the things that we as people need to learn and appreciate is living in the now. See, so many people are just so obsessed with the future and just like, oh wait, but what if tomorrow I don't get this? Or like, oh, but I'm worried about like next year. What about like, what if I don't get a university? But like, just live in the present tense. Live in the now, because you're never gonna get now ever again. And by the time you go to the future, the present will be gone. You know what I mean? Like you'll lose those valuable time, and you'll lose that experience with those people that you love the most. And it's kind of a deep thought, actually.
Yeah.
Nostalgia.
So, well, before we talk about nostalgia, right, we got to talk about what creates nostalgia in the first place, right, which is memory, right? And
Yes.
what is memory? What do you think is memory in your opinion?
Well, there's obviously two ways of saying what memory is and what's scientifically and what we like to predominantly explain to ourselves. Memory is basically like a process or a bunch of processes that are used to acquire, store, retain, and later retrieve information. And going back into like what memory is as a function, there's three main parts to memory. There's the encoding part, there is the storage, and there's retrieval.
I see you did your research.
I have. It's actually, remember my TED talk was supposed to be about memory. There's a good book about this I will mention later. Actually,
Wait,
let me
are we
just
actually
mention
still
that.
doing that?
I have no idea. Are we supposed to do that TED talk there? Like, we'll do it
I
some
really
point.
wanted to do it, man. It was
Anyways.
like I was gonna like talk about the universe and space and do like the same thing I did in my what is it in my what do I write for the university? I keep forgetting
Oh,
the
crap. I don't remember now.
The common app
yeah,
essay,
common
yes,
app.
yes, yes,
Okay,
that
yeah,
the one I showed you, right? That was
yeah, yeah, yeah.
revolutionary, and had the Alan Watts quote, the universe thing that I believe I mentioned two podcasts ago on the alien thing.
Yeah.
No, not on the alien thing. The time episode. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, encoding, storage, and retrieval. Obviously, encoding is where we learn something and we just basically convert that into some form of knowing or some form of remembering it. So you associate that with, like, let's say we learn about the banana is yellow, so you have a picture of a banana and you can tell that color, okay, recognize it's yellow, that you're encoding that, and then you're storing it somewhere in your brain, in your memory. And then retrieval is where you retrieve it whenever you need it. Short term in Freudian psychology, you do psychology, you used to do psychology, but if you were to look at this in psychology, in Freudian psychology, it is known as the conscious mind. It's where you know something consciously, and that is what is known as the short term memory. Is where when you're in the moment and you're present, you know that for a fact, like you're remembering that consciously. Now, long term is known as the preconscious and the unconscious, where it's there, but you're not in the moment thinking about it, but it's already stored in your brain and you have it ready. I think you could use computers as an example of describing this. You could use cache and RAM, or have like a hard drive as a way of
I mean, it's the
it.
same thing as like RAM and the hard drive, the same distinction, I believe, but this is more of like the basic stuff, that the thing that I find sort of, well, you always have to have the basics, right? But at some point, all of this starts to become boring, and I think that's the way the psychology in school basically ended up. I had so many questions, so many things I wanted to know about that never actually ended up being answered. And essentially we just went through like all the basic stuff, how to do experiments, blah, 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 instead of like actually learning or talking about discussing the interesting things. I mean, we did occasionally, but like in the end, so I think what I want to talk about today is not necessarily like the basics of memory. I don't want to delve too deep into that, but maybe
of course
something like memory is in a sense linked to emotion, and there are several studies that definitely show that link between them. And
I think it could be argued that memory is one of the most basic things that any living thing needs, because like if we don't have the capability to not recall, then how will we?
If you don't have the capability to recall,
how will you be able to move forward? Is what I mean. I mean, the whole idea of evolution basically just advancing or development is based on having and learning from past mistakes. And how will you be able to learn from past mistakes if you don't remember making them in the first place? Right? And so I think like when we're going back down to what makes us human and just what makes a living thing living is our capability to actually have memory and being able to efficiently use it. Because I think the issue with most people nowadays is not that, because you would think, I have bad memory. We could all say that we have bad memory, but in reality, it's not that you have bad memory. You have awesome memory. It's just that we don't know how to use that memory because we haven't learned.
It's like a skill.
Exactly. It's a skill that, so like these people, you don't have to necessarily be smart. Like, for instance, like there was this research done, and actually we had this in one of our SAT tests. Actually, it was pretty funny as one of those passages. There were these studies done to these taxi drivers and to these study done.
I know this. Psychology, hippocampus, blah, blah.
Yes, and so they were looking at how like different parts of the brain were developing based on their specialization, and you would see that there were parts of the brain that were being much more developed, and like because of taxi drivers have to do this test before they could actually become a taxi driver. They need to know every route. They need to be able to decide which is the fastest way, this and that. There's a lot of those casualties. I mean, not casualties.
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 Well, they dying out there.
Yeah, no. Formalities, that's what I meant to say. That they need to be able to correlate with when they're becoming a taxi driver. And so a part of that process, there were these researchers and these scientists who were doing these tests on these potential taxi drivers. And one thing they noted over a specific period of time is that from their initial stages to the end stages of them being a taxi driver, a specific part of their brain was heavily developed. Not any other part, but a specific part. I'm not really sure exactly what it is. I didn't do that much deep research, but that specific part of the brain was specifically developed, and it was much more. It was standing out because they used that more for their daily tasks, for their finding which route is the best, and they memorized it.
But obviously, as much as you train the skill, there's always limits, right? You can't perfect anything.
Right? Of course.
And so that's why I want to talk about, again, the link between emotion and memory, and the reason for nostalgia or whatever. So when we talk about emotion and memory, when you remember things in the past, the thing is, you tend to remember things that are emotionally significant. That's the reason why perhaps you don't remember. Well, this is for a normal person, right? Some maybe photographic memory could, but usually you wouldn't remember what you ate. Maybe, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. You wouldn't remember exactly where you ate, what you ate, but if you remember maybe your 7th birthday or something, you could still remember the birthday cake, what kind of flavor. Well, if the birthday was significant, that's because that birthday was connected with emotions of happiness or things like that. And that's also the reason why people experience PTSD or trauma or those kind of things, because the emotions they experience are very strong and linked to suffering, sadness, those kind of things.
Yes.
And essentially, those strong emotions lead them to remember and sort of, recall that constantly. And this is something that's been widely studied, but at the same time, we still don't know much about it, is the strong link between emotion and memory in general. And so this link is, I think we're feeling these nostalgia. We're feeling this nostalgia right now, mostly because, well, in a sense that, well, the way I try to rationalize it is maybe that we're more moody, and so we experience more like bigger fluctuations in emotions, happier happiness, sadder sadness, things like that. And also that we haven't lived long. So compared to other moments in our lives, those higher highs and lower lows tend to be far stronger relative to the things that we've experienced, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, stronger association, and so that creates stronger moments of nostalgia. That's why these moments in high school, in college, become very nostalgic and happy. So what is nostalgia? Nostalgia is essentially longing for the past, or for personal, based on personal associations. It's that feeling of warmth, of friends, of happiness, of laughs. What I like to call youth, and what I'm talking about because I've talked about it with you. Basically, a longing for a simple moment that has already passed. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Before I go into my opinion, I will say that you were discussing about the link between memory and emotions. And one of the reasons why, like, a lot of people are saying, scientists are claiming that one of the reasons why we tend to remember things when a specific emotion is triggered or a specific event is triggered is mainly because of a specific emotion that you felt there. Because I'll go back to the 3 parts of the main processes involved in memory: encoding, storage, and retrieval. In storage, there's ways of associating memory to parts of the brain, and emotion is one of the strongest ways of storing memory. Is what were you were feeling at that moment. If that emotion was significant, you will remember it because it was significant to you. And again, when birthdays, you're feeling happy, or like, let's say you failed in a big exam or something, and that day you were devastated. You'll remember that day because that was a big emotion that that had to create a significant impact on you for that day. And so there is a distinct link between emotion and memory, but it can go far beyond that, which I am not aware of because of my lack of knowledge in that certain topic. But going back to nostalgia that you were talking about, Kev, I think it's an interesting concept because it's something that we've always had, and it's also something that we kind of need. Because, like, if you were to think about it, without nostalgia, nostalgia is known as a method of motivation. In a lot of these professional psychologists and these psychiatrists, they say that nostalgia is one of the forms of being able to motivate an individual, because we tend to look to others or look for motivation elsewhere. And sometimes in reality we get these own recollections in the past, back when we were happy, back when we failed. Let's say like let's say in 20 years time I'm in a business and it's failing, and I'm looking back at now where my YouTube was failing, and I'm like, back then my problems were small, and wait, I look back, how did I fix that YouTube issue? And then from there I can use that to apply in my current life. So like there are reasons to why that nostalgia could be useful for us. At the same time, it could make us just sadder, just be like, oh, life was better back then.
I think it's like bittersweet,
Yeah,
it's definitely a sort of like you're happy that it happened, but also sad that it's already passed. But you're also sort of looking to the future and looking to make these new memories that are akin to what you've experienced in the past. So I think it's something positive. And nostalgia was a word originally coined in, I think, the 1688 or something, and it came from two Greek words, which were the Greek word for returning home and the Greek word for pain. So originally it was sort of like this, in other words, just a longing for home, so strong that the only cure was that you had to return home. But it commonly occurs during, major life transitions, like into adulthood, or just like right now we're experiencing. That's why this is very, it hits home. You know what I'm saying? That's where that phrase comes from as well. But or aging, and it apparently is advantageous and helps solidify one's identity. Like the things you stand for, the things that you value,
and I think that is
memories and sort of that.
I mean, that's the case, is that it gives us a reason to move forward. It's because like it's looking back at the values that we used to live for back when things were less complicated, and that's kind of the motivation that people tend to seek when they're in hard times, and that's usually when nostalgia kicks in.
Yeah, even right now when we're experiencing like basically it's a sort of like anchor, right? We're lost. We don't know what we want to do, where we want to go, but then the nostalgia just kicks in and you're like, I remember all the friends, the happy times we had, and it just suddenly kicks you into high gear. You're like, all right, we need to get back into gear. I want to go out with my friends, or like I want to work hard for something, or I want to become the best at whatever. So it is something good. And something interesting that I've come across during my research was the lifespan retrieval curve. So that's just basically a plot of how much memories are encoded versus age. And so there's this thing called the reminiscence bump, and again, this proves what I've been saying, despite me not having the necessary information at the time to know if I was correct. But the reminiscence bump exists between the age around 13 to 28, again, where where more memories are encoded within that time. And so the time which we feel nostalgic for becomes that time, because it is the time where a lot of our memories are encoded. And so this is why, again, that I said, right, it's one of the biggest times of our lives, something that we're going to value a lot in our later years. And this is why I like, and this is why the timing for this epidemic is really, really unfortunate, because we miss out on our last half year or so of high school, we miss out on the formal or the prom, on the grad. Well, I don't know if we'll miss out on graduation, but we miss out on the stress of studying. On you tend to miss those things
Yeah.
with your friends, with everything. But again, this is the time period, like, well, what I'd like to describe as youth, right? The warmth you feel, the friends, everything. And I hope in the next few years, during the rest of the reminiscence bump, you and me, or maybe some other people, can continue to make those memories, and we can look back in our future years. But which is and then the other times, like, so when we're young, right, we won't remember much of it, and that's why the memory, it's essentially not that many memories encoded there. And then also, as we approach our later years, of course, more memories will be encoded, just because of the recency effect. But yeah, when I don't know, man, when I talk about nostalgia, it's always like, you know what I mean.
I mean, it is sometimes hard to address, because, like, we as people tend to always have personal afflictions towards specific nostalgic moments in our lives, and it's usually just like that realization that you're never gonna get it back. But like you said, don't be sad that it ended, be happy that it happened.
No, that's your quote.
That was mine. That's my WhatsApp quote. That was what I use on WhatsApp.
That's your quote.
But
and that's kind of the thing I mentioned from time to time. But in the end, you can't help but longing for those moments, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a good thing that we have that, because, like, if we don't have these moments that we appreciate in our lives, and these moments that we definitely, like, wish never happened, if they never happened, you would never be the person you are today. And I think that there's a reason, if not direct, there's some reason that has occurred. And that's just my opinion. I feel like, I mean, my mom always says everything happens for a reason. That might just be because of her relation to the culture or religion. But if you think about it, things just do happen, and whether we have control of it or not, it just does happen. And you're just like, I just give off and volunteer to that thought that maybe it's just all for good, or just to happen for some higher calling. But, like, definitely, I think nostalgia is one of those things, because, like, I've also seen a lot of articles where people are arguing whether nostalgia is just a simple bodily, like, is it a function that just happens automatically, or is there a reason to why that's being used? And one of the reasons that they were discussing was motivation, that I already discussed earlier. But it's one of the things that we as humans use and kind of require in order to function and to progress and to evolve.
Well, you said, like, everything happens for a reason, right? But I saw this video, like, I think that quote is often misinterpreted, right? That, I mean, it is true that everything happens for a reason, but regardless of whether it's good or it's bad, there is always a reason for it. And you can't just be like, oh my, you can't just be like, just because something didn't go your way, you're like mad or something. But I don't remember exactly what the point of the video was, but it's something about, like, everything happens for a reason. Is not in the sense to justify, like, the things that happen, but, like, to understand that there are certain things that occur, and you just have to keep going.
Yeah.
But so I also want to talk about why nostalgia as an emotion. Well, I think it's an emotion, right?
Yes, you could classify it as an emotion.
Feels like,
yes.
Why nostalgia is associated with positive memories and things like that. Well, I saw this thing, and it said, since we want our future identity to be positive, we feel nostalgia for the good memories as opposed to the bad memories, and we feel, we experience those emotions or the nostalgia of a certain memory or moment better than as if it was, or better than it was at the time. Mainly because of multiple reasons, actually, but like the idea of, you know, like you said before, that we don't see the value of something until it's gone, or it's just valuable because it's out of reach, or because it's become a memory or a moment.
I mean, again, I'll go back to what I was talking about with you know, storing and retrieving memory. One of the reasons why nostalgia is so powerful is because like we don't associate with emotions or with events that were basic or like just something that we do every other day. There's a reason to why that nostalgic moment is special, is because it was special. It's something that was different. It's something that stands out on its own, whether or not you remember it. It's like an event that let's say your graduation or your 18th birthday or your 50th birthday. It's special because it's a milestone. It's special because it's a moment of growth, or it shows something that's out of the ordinary, out of like a normal lifestyle that you lead every day. And the reason why we have it as a nostalgic moment is because we tend to associate these things with emotions or some kind of thought. And usually, and Kev, and I say this to you right now, you know this and I know this, but other than emotion, music is one of the most influential things to nostalgia. Like if I listen to a specific song, I can immediately think of what I was doing at the moment I was listening to the song, or what was happening around that moment, or like what was the vibe there, if you know what I mean. And this has been something that's been heavily researched for decades now. I mean, the link between emotion and music, and why it's just...
And memory,
And memory.
All of it.
Because like another thing people say is, oh, you study better when you listen to instrumental music or like some kind of calming music. And there's a relationship to why that is. And there's also like, there's always these songs that you listen to and they bring you to a certain time of your life. Because like, oh, back then this song was like really famous, or like, oh, I was going through something and this song kept me really, really happy. And I feel like that's another amazing way of having great memory, is by associating songs or making up your own lyrics.
Associating certain things,
Yeah, because they have their own meanings behind them, or like some form of relationship with that specific event.
That's why like a good way of remembering things is through creating a song. And that's why everybody remembers the ABC by ABCDEFG, you know.
I still remember that EM Spectrum song.
Yeah. Instead of remembering the exact order, every time we want to figure out, whether something's before or after in the alphabet, you have to go through the whole song.
ABC. Yeah,
I think that's pretty funny. Right? You're like, yo, what's the letter after Y? Like A B C D E F G H I J K, and you go all the way to the end, and you're like, oh, it's Z.
Yeah,
that's pretty funny. But I think these things are commonly referred to as nostalgic triggers, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's basically the idea of looking at an object or listening to something, or something that evokes suddenly evokes this emotion, which is happiness and
what you are talking about.
I don't know if it's exactly nostalgia, but it evokes this emotion that is akin to nostalgia. So like, you feel this happiness, this warmth, the longing for the past, that kind of thing, the feelings of youth, and this can happen if you never even if you've never encountered this trigger before. So could be like for example, some songs that I come across, the funk songs of Japan back in the 20th century, even though I've never listened to these songs before, for some reason they're able to evoke the sense of nostalgia for me.
And
for me to it links. I don't know. It just suddenly makes me start
What
thinking of
you're
Japan
what you're
and
describing, Kev,
all the
what you're describing is a great example of the retrieval process of memory. It's how we
yeah.
retrieve a specific part of our memory, and again, like just looking at an object or listening to a conversation, or like I guess that kind of goes to deja vu a bit, but I'm not exactly sure how that works. Maybe do you know how deja vu
Yeah,
works?
I guess it kind of goes into deja vu. Like, but it's not exactly deja vu. It's more like it's not like you have the. It's not like I have the feeling that I've listened to it before. No, I
No, no, no.
know for 100% fact that I have
You
not
have,
listened to
yeah,
this,
yeah.
but it just gives me that feeling of like looking to the past and like I just imagine Japan. Then I start imagining, the happy times we had
Yes, and
together, the warmth, the friends, everything. And I think this goes further beyond like, I find myself feeling calm and living through my past experiences. But this I feel comes, well, for me, commonly from those funk, jazz, soul songs from Japan in the 20th century, especially, or even the US, or other places like that. I feel like this is the reason, um, music is so linked to emotions, and emotions are linked to memory, and so they all connect, together in one.
And an interesting thing I just had, like, the one thing I thought about is like why we keep these um like these treasures, or like what is it called, like some
Mementos.
mementos, or some sort of physical, or like a
Yeah, like
tangible
a physical representation of a
representation
moment
of a
or
moment.
memory.
It's like we have these albums, we have these photos, or sometimes, if let's say you're going to Disney World or something, you have this random small, like a ball, or like a snowball or something like that, or something that could, an object usually, that is usually a material that is used to, again, as a form of encoding part of the memory process to that specific memory. And I think that's why it's been a part of our lives. Like, everybody does this, and it's we don't even think about it, right? We just, if we have something, we just put it and be like, oh, this could be a memory of you and me. Why do we take photos? We don't take photos just to be like, okay, let's just take it for the moment. You
Yeah.
take them because at some point in life you want to go back and you want to be like, those days. And I think
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
that is another example of nostalgia. You don't have to be like just doing something and then randomly having a pre-conscious or unconscious trigger that brings you to that moment. Some way of what is it called, of having some form of going back to that moment, like a photo, a
I mean,
song.
technically, it's just another trigger, right? But it's
Yes,
us
yes, yes.
willingly creating those
we
triggers.
we are
You know?
willingly creating those triggers, and most of the time we aren't willingly creating, if you know what I mean, because we're just used to it.
Yeah,
And it's one of the ways,
unconsciously. Yeah,
yes,
but
and yeah.
it goes back, I think, to the time of back in the caveman days, when people
Yeah.
were like drawing on the walls. I think
Yes,
in a
yes.
sense that is also a way to pass down stories or talk about things like that, to create just mementos in general of like, oh, hey, the first time I hunted an animal or something like that. It's through our biology that we tend to, create these triggers, and nostalgia has evolved with us to be a positive thing, and um, yeah, something like that. But also, I noticed that only recently have I been taking photos. So like, I would say, 6 years, maybe
Mm,
6 7 years behind this time,
yeah.
I wasn't taking any photos or videos or anything. Well, mainly probably because I didn't have, you know, that good of a time because of the way my situation was, my environment was, the school environment, everything. It wasn't very friendly. It wasn't very conducive. But ever since meeting you guys, you guys have been very good to me. You guys have been really great friends, and I think I've because of the happy moments we've been able to form, I've grown accustomed to taking photos and feeling nostalgia for those old moments that we have. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and it is. We've all clearly, if you're this far in the podcast, you would obviously know that we're talking about this because it's important to us, and it is important to everybody because like having these memories and having these nostalgic moments is something that makes us humane and it makes us humans. And like again, I'm going back to it because this is very important because like we wouldn't be the people who we are if we haven't learned from these things that we've done in the past. And we tend to grow and we tend to develop both, and I'm saying both, like academically and just like as a human being, like a normal person, just being a good character with a good personality. These moments that happen in our lives, we tend to keep them forever because unlike the actual moments, these mementos and the memory of those events will always be with us for us to cherish. And it's that,
well, not always, and that's why we should cherish it while we can.
Yeah, I guess, and that's why they're important. Most things are important because they don't last for a long time, or else no one will see the value in them. So that's why. That's
in a sense the value of life itself, right?
Yeah,
it's life is so fleeting, and you don't have many opportunities to do things, that life itself becomes so valuable, and that in itself, death gives meaning to life because if you lived forever, then there is essentially no life. Because you're not living. You're not living. To live is to prosper, is to do what you want to do. Well, not to be taken wrongly, but to live to the fullest.
It is
to live.
Yeah, exactly. And we're never gonna feel that satisfaction if you never reach that point. Like when you're, I'm of course I haven't died before, but I've read all these things about these people who have died and come back. You know what I mean? Like these people who have died for like a minute or two or like a few seconds and have come back. And then the things that they say to these interview people or like just to their family members is that, when they were dying, they were recollecting everything, that all the important moments in their lives were coming back to them. All these, like from the moment that they were a child all the way to they were growing, all these important events, these moments were coming back. And they always cry. Like they have said, like I've watched about 10 to 15 of these cases, and every single one of them they've said that at the end when they're like actually dying, they have like a tear or two because they realize that it's so valuable, and what they've lived is just, it's that value is just like, it's unquantifiable because it's worth so much. And when you lose that,
it's not about the end result, right?
It's
not about whether you live or you die. It's about the life you've lived, the things you've experienced, the people you shared it with. It's all about that. And in death, it's sort of an acceptance. You're letting go of everything, and to realize the value in life. To really reconcile with everything.
And so that's why it's important for us to take these moments, and especially now because like we're in this moment with the pandemic, we have so much time with our families. Well, if you are with your families at this moment in time, if you're separated, still find ways to connect with them, because like this is basically like I would say it's a blessing in disguise, because I get to know a lot of my family members so well, and not necessarily just the people at home, but I mean like people who are living elsewhere. I call them a lot, I talk to them, even my friends. I get to meet a lot of new people online. I get to know them. It's like a moment of self-reflection and just something that we could use. And I think obviously this time right here, Kev, we're not going to forget this ever, because like this will be one of the nostalgic moments in the future when we're like, oh, I have to go outside every day. I'm like, oh my god, remember back when we had quarantine? I didn't have to go anywhere.
Maybe now we're suffering through it, but then
we'll
be nostalgic.
We'll be like, oh man,
screwed up as that sounds.
Want to get no, but it'd be like, oh, thank God I didn't have to write my exams. I mean, like, there's these things that we don't.
It'll be like,
Go ahead.
Go again.
Yeah, I mean, like, there will be these moments where at the moment you don't understand. Like right now, we're doing this podcast, we're now discussing this, and I'm like, oh damn it, probably would have gotten better results if I wrote my exam. And then you're like, wait, actually, I would have failed math if I didn't do this. I'm like, you know what I mean? So you don't appreciate the moment there.
Adrian, are you trying to cheat here?
No.
Trying to cheat the system.
But like, in all seriousness, like I'm saying, these moments, right? No matter how they look now or how they feel now, at some point they'll be significant to you, whether in a good way or a bad way. You will come back to them, because whether you know it or not, they are important and they are significant, and they will, in one way or another, affect or have some impact in your life or any decision that you make in the future. Oh, your microphone fell down. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much why we need memory.
Well, you know, right? I am a very avid and studious person about these sort of matters, about moments, about memory, about nostalgia, those kind of things, those emotions, and I talk to you a lot about it. And this is something that we know, between our group of friends, that I was planning a trip to Japan because I wanted to experience, a lot of great things with you guys before we leave to university. Before we separate our ways, essentially. Well, not permanently, because we can always contact each other, and I would like us to stay in contact, but it's something that, I like to be free. I like to roam around with friends, have an adventure. I have this for some reason, this longing for adventure to create these nostalgic moments right now, while the reminiscence bump is still in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It could be the youth you were talking about.
It really sucks that this plan of mine was, came crashing down with this epidemic and everything. Even though we would have had to suffer through our exams, I feel like, I would have really wanted to go on that trip with you guys, regardless,
I mean, for me, I feel like definitely that's one good points you've said, Kev. Like, for me at first, when this whole thing was happening, right, I was quite skeptical with, like, because I was confused. We had questions, unanswered questions, and at the moment, I just felt like, I'm just confused, and I don't know what to think. I don't know what to do, and I was in my room. I didn't really do much. I just sat down and thought, just kept thinking, like, okay, because like,
yeah, that's good. You should do that more.
We should do that more. You should just nothing, no phones, no computer. Just sit down and just close your eyes or just think. It's very important. And I noticed that, like, if, for instance, let's say that this whole pandemic was never existed, right? We were doing our exams, we would have finished, we would have graduated properly, we would have had our graduation trip, and there is a value, because like, we did our exams, so as a result, after spending 2 years of hard work, our let's say, what is it? Crap, I can't speak English now. What is that
Efforts?
thing? Yeah, but what do you get? What do you get for doing something?
Satisfaction?
Not necessarily satisfaction. What I'm searching for right now is
gratification.
It could be gratification. Crap. What I mean is, like, when you do something, you get something in return, right?
Accomplishment.
Yeah, a sense of accomplishment.
Reward.
Right? Reward. That is what I was searching for. Reward. Correctly. Exactly. Thank you. We get reward. My brain is messy up. So when we do something, we tend to look for rewards because you have that sense of accomplishment. For me, I thought that this graduation trip was only worth because I did the amount of work necessary for that to feel like, oh, I'm having this graduation trip because I earned it, because I worked for it. And I felt kind of bad after that I got the news that my exams were cancelled, and I knew that I was going to get the diploma anyway. I felt like, okay, that's nice, I don't have to do work, but there is no sense of achievement there. There's no sense of... I wouldn't be as happy as I would be if I did the exam when I got that paper that says, oh, diploma certified or like awarded to Adrian, because like you know what I mean, right?
I feel like I understand your point in the fact that definitely the satisfaction wouldn't be as great in terms of getting your diploma because you didn't actually do the final exam. You didn't like push through everything. But in the sense, this sudden announcement, this sudden cancellation, just plunged us straight into the experience of being lost, of being empty. I think this is something everybody experiences once they finish high school or once they finish college. It's the same feeling again. You're lost. You don't know what to do. You know, it's a new stage in your life. Again, it's the reason for nostalgia and keeping us grounded. But in a sense, you know, we're just figuring out what life has to offer it. And I think right now, you know, something that we've been so used to doing routinely was just suddenly just disappeared, that we don't have to do something anymore. And that, you know, the fact that all we've wanted throughout our lives was to not be burdened by school, but once we aren't, we sort of start to miss school, the routine, and we don't know what to do with this freedom, you know.
Man.
And I think the important thing is to, yeah, exactly. You're starting to feel it now, right? Everything.
You have no idea, man. Literally, for the past,
yeah, exactly.
ever since we left school, I have been literally dreaming of like our school friends, like going to like residentials together, going to classes,
exactly.
having those jokes and those snack times.
Maybe it's because you're not experiencing it in real life. Your brain is like, oh, I want to experience this somehow, you know, and it's just
one way or another. Yeah,
pops up in your dreams. But so I feel like the most important thing now is to just, you know, with this freedom, is not to waste it, but to do the things that we want to do, you know, to do the things that we've been putting off forever, to live the way we want to live, such that when we die, when we reconcile with everything, we would have lived a fulfilling life, you know. That's why, regardless of whether or not I've quote unquote earned it, as you've said, I don't think that's the right way to think about it. I think it's about, you know, when in the future, will I have regretted not going on this graduation trip? Definitely would have. You know, if we had a chance to go on this graduation trip, we would, right?
Yeah, of course.
But if we did have the chance and you didn't take it, thinking that, you know, you didn't earn it, you probably would have regretted it in the future. You know, with that kind of mindset. So I think the importance of the graduation trip, in my opinion, is not that I've earned it through my hard work. No, it's that I want to make memories, you know. I want to be nostalgic. I want to live life. I want to adventure with you guys while I still can, you know. And that's something that's very precious, and maybe you know, I as long as I've lived, I don't think I've found like the meaning to life yet. But I guess you could say the family, the friends, relationships, everything are a part of that, because without, you know, the people around me, I would, maybe I don't know whether I would have made it this far, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
You're part of that, you know?
Yeah, of course. I mean, and you are to me as well. And I think like these moments, I mean, definitely this moment right here, like us being in this quarantine here, will definitely be a nostalgic moment in the future, because like we've, as our generation has gone through something, like we've gone through hardships, right? And this will be one of the most, because again, you said everything is unprecedented, everything changed so fast, like in just a matter of seconds, everything just changed. Like, we're all at home, I mean, things are closed, everything is different, we can't go outside, and our response to this was the way we adapted to this. I mean, I adapted really fast, really quickly. I immediately changed. I was like, okay, if we're home, let me do this. Let me change my schedule. If I'm sleeping like this, okay. And I moved towards that new routine. And I think for us, I mean, adaptation is one of the most important ways of surviving. And in the future, if we're having issues with adaptation, you'll always come back to this moment and be like, wait, but I could do that back then, so I could do it now. And it'll be one of these moments.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's more about I don't know if it's much about the learning experience. It's more of about the memory itself.
It could be. Yeah.
I mean, we could derive some extra meaning just like that, but I don't think it's all about that. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
It's an extra plus.
I mean, again, it's gonna differ from each person. because we also have some personal values that we relate to, especially with memory. Because to you, memory could be the most helpful thing for you. Like, for let's say, to successful people, they obviously succeeded because they've had like these moments in their lives where they've learned things, and their memory is one of the reasons why they have been able to you recall and use that information to build up their empire and succeed. But at the same time, that same memory could be something a child uses. Like, we see that with babies especially, because like there's this whole documentary on Netflix actually about babies. It's literally called Babies. And the second one is coming next week, I think. Second part. It's fascinating because it talks about babies and how they operate and why they're so special and why they're like the basis of humankind and why we need to protect them. And so it was discussing how babies, they think and they behave. It was going on child behavior. They have these child behavior psychologists and the psychiatrists were coming and talking, and it was quite interesting at how their memory actually operates. They obviously follow us. They tend to look for. They tend to follow things. They don't do anything of their own. So if they observe, let's say a mother talking on the phone, then obviously the baby will find something on the floor and start picking it up and be like nya 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 or something like that, because it tends to look.
I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like that in a sense is credence to their faster learning rate. And so they, by following, the things around them, or they're essentially just trying to absorb as much information as quickly as possible.
Yep.
And so their brain is more fluid. They can learn things faster, and I feel like this is the stage in which, maybe not the most conscious, but the fastest rate at which you learn things. That's why it's the easiest to learn languages when you're a child. That's why you remember your mother tongue the most. It's the thing you grew up with, and it's all about the most efficient way to learn language, just absorbing input, everything. But I think, well, another realization that I just made is that maybe some of that, as we grow up, some of that brain capacity that's being used to absorb at an extraordinary rate is sectioned off to start consciousness. So as a trade for learning slower, we become more conscious of the things we're doing. And maybe that's a process that, happens as we grow up.
And the reason why people tend to have like bad memory, or like people they tend to be like, oh, I actually don't know that, is because it's not that they don't have good memory. It's that they haven't stored that memory properly, or it's been misstored, or they just don't know how to find it. And that's why like we have these triggers that bring up specific memories, is because you find a way to trigger it. And these really like famous mind magicians, or like these people who are like really good mind readers, or not mind readers, what am I saying? I mean like people who have good memory, like memory champions. All these people, they have mind magicians.
Mind readers.
Mind magicians is an actual thing, actually, very interesting. But
I know.
These people who are like specialized in being able to remember things, they have these techniques and strategies that they've learned that allows them to like store information, or store like events, and be able to access them immediately. Actually, you were talking about photographic memory. There is no such thing as photographic memory. It's just that you're able to remember things exactly how they were listed. Like if I were to give you like an order of numbers, like 1450, you would.
But I think there is photographic memory, no?
No, there actually isn't. That was an interesting thing that I actually figured out. I mean, you can search it up, but in one of the books I read, Moonwalking with Einstein, is very interesting. It was talking about how like we tend to misuse the term photographic memory. It's just that you're not going to remember a photo just by looking at it. You're going to have some associations with it, and some patterns, or like some sort of a technique or a way of knowing something. Because like one of the issues that we have,
like Jane said, your memory should be a fortress.
Yeah. And the thing is, some people have the base skill, and it's not like a gift, But I guess you could say it's a gift, but gifted people sometimes just already know ways of like memorizing stuff. And that's why like probably like smart people in school, they usually do well in these exams because they're able to recall memories quite often, because they're like, oh, I know this, we learned this, that was on page 273 of this biology book, and it said they can literally read line by line, and that's because they were able to associate that with that specific book. They could look at that, what was the atmosphere around.
In terms of learning, the fastest way or the best way to memorize something is to actually learn it, so that you don't actually have to remember it. Because once you learn something, for example, like, you know, how certain forces work or so, if I learn and I'm curious, and that sort of emotional, you know, experience goes through something significant, the process of learning itself is conducive to memory. So if you learn and understand something properly, you will, in a sense, remember it, right? That's why the fastest, I think the most efficient way to remember something is to truly like understand it.
That is absolutely correct, because obviously if you truly are fascinated in that area, if you're actually interested, or if you actually just know, plainly understand, there's a different value, because then you'll be encoding that information to a more specifically. It'll be more broke down. You'll remember more things about one small thing than you will about one small thing. Like you will, what am I saying? You will know more about one small thing. Like if you're learning about like what is an amoeba, you would
mean more detailed.
More detailed is what I mean, exactly. You'll know that more detailed because you understand. Because like if you're like just remembering definitions, you're not understanding them. You're just remembering some random guy wrote down. Right? Because and it's, yes.
There's essentially no association, because by learning things, you create associations in your head, right?
Yes.
Like hammer. If you think about a hammer, you know, your association, you know, you start to associate things with it, like the shape, the way it works, you know, the way it feels in your hand. There are a lot of triggers that can you know, pull things up, and this happens because you've learned about it, you've held it, you know, certain things like that.
Learning is one of the most important things that we have to be able to do as people, because like again, we only develop and we progress through learning. But if we don't do it properly, then what's the point? But like if we learn to do it efficiently, then we could be having technological advancements much faster. We could be growing at a much faster rate. We could be an efficient society running at an efficient pace, and definitely memory working and like understanding how one's memory works will definitely be a huge help with this whole this revolution about being able to you know, stand up and actually learn and grow.
I feel like now is a better time than ever to go back to memory with our closing remarks, you know. With the epidemic right now, you know, everybody I think is struggling with this lack of things to do, or just this feeling of emptiness and lost. I think the most important thing to keep in mind is to just keep going, you know, keep our old memories in mind, and, you know, keep moving forward with a fervent desire to just, you know, make more of those happy memories, to live our lives as we want to, as we should, to find the thing that, you know, most interests us, to find the thing to live for. To live is to find what is to live for.
That's
how ironic that is. The purpose to live, the purpose of living is to find the purpose of living.
And that will differ to each person. And that's why it's special and it's unique.
I think the problem here with us as humans is we tend to look for things that don't exist in the universe, like order. Order doesn't exist. Everything is chaotic. As much as we try to find order in things, everything is chaotic. Nothing, in a sense, is symmetrical. It may look symmetrical, but, you know, as you get down in the details, it isn't. And also meaning, you know, we tend to look for meaning. That's why we go to religion, whatever. And meaning doesn't essentially exist. But the thing is, if meaning doesn't exist, then it's our freedom to choose what we do with our lives, right? I think that's the most important thing. And that's the reason why we're talking about nostalgia right now, is because of all these happy memories we've made. And I think there's a desire in both of us to go off and, make more of those happy memories.
Yeah.
So, off to the races. Let's go.
Indeed. Go and make memories, people. Because, I mean, seriously, you will regret not making any memories. And that regret will remain as a memory that you will recall. And that could be a way of torture. So don't do that. Remember.
All right, so I guess this is where we'll end it off today.
Yep.
I don't know. I do. All right. Yeah, that's where we'll end it off today.
Yes.
Make sure to check out both of our channels. Which Adrian's been posting videos now.
Yes.
I have not.
I have a few more uploading.
Because reasons, but yeah, we'll be posting maybe in the future, maybe not. Adrian probably will, but me, I don't know. We'll see. But check our stuff out. Check out any of the links in the description if you're interested. If you're on Spotify, check out the YouTube. If you're on YouTube, check out the Spotify. And make sure to like, subscribe. You don't really have to turn on notifications because we'll always be here.
Yes.
Every week,
mostly.
But just comment, any memories or anything.
Oh, and Instagram.
You have any fun memories or any interesting things that you have to talk about.
Yes, and you can reach us on our Instagram as well, because we have those highlights that we put up. Yeah. All right.
Peace out, boys.
Peace out, guys.